Today I show you how to build this modern house in ARK Survival Ascended, or my modern lakeside base that I designed for Valguero, but you can definitely place this anywhere as long as you have enough space. Now I did use some custom cosmetics in the design. Technically that means you can build this building out of any materials you want, so as strong or as weak as you want. In the tutorial I'll be using different materials so that it is easier to follow which parts you need to skin in which skin. All of the cosmetics that I've used will also be linked down below, but this base itself offers you plenty of room for all of your needs during your ARK adventures. It has small little garage to the side, as well as a bigger dino pen underneath the main building, and even some more space in the building on the side. It has a nice main entrance leading you to the crossroads between the two buildings. Of course, plenty of space on the inside for all of your crafting and storage need, and plenty of space to have your own little bedroom, of course. It also offers a greenhouse so that you can still grow all of your crops, as well as hatch your elder claws, and in general just an abundance of space in this modern and sleek design. Hello there survivors, and welcome back to another build tutorial. We're gonna dive in right now. All the information about the amount of structures as well as the skins will be linked down below, and of course feel free to leave your suggestions you'd like to see for future builds down in the comments too. And if you enjoy seeing these types of build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video, really helps me out, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So as usual, we're going to be starting out by building the foundations, and over here we want to start with a foundation that is 6 wide in total, so just like this, and then it's going to be 11 long in total. So we're just going to keep adding this until we have 11 in total. Then we can of course make this side over here 6 as well, and then we can in fact already connected back up with each other. So this is one of these side buildings. It's also the build that we'll do first once we finish the entire foundation, so that you could start living out of that whilst you build the rest of the building. So from here at the front we want to go in by 2, and then over here we want to have 2 foundations coming out, and then we'll have the same thing over here, so another 2 foundations. So we basically have the same kind of shape to go on to the next part of the building, which means we can now make this 2 wide in total. Then we can go in by 1. We'll have 4 foundations going across like this before we have another 2 foundations right here on this corner. And then from this corner of 2, we want to bring this out by 1. So right here in the front, we have 1 sticking out. Before we go back in by 1 again and have 2 over here and have another 1 sticking out. So we have 2 of these corner pieces that stick out a little bit more. And then we can continue along the side here. So we already have these 2, but we want this to be 10 long in total. So we'll just continue a little bit until we have 10 in total for this entire shape. And then we can basically repeat the same shape as we have on the entrance. So we want to bring this in by 1 and then bring this out again so that the corner pieces stick out a little bit, and this will be inside a little bit. We can also now kind of complete this shape by bringing this out all the way back into the front, because that is also one of the side buildings we'll have. Then before we continue this side of the wall, we kind of want to bring out these foundations, because this is like the middle section. We can bring this out all the way over here and then add 1 more to it, so 1 more to extend this all, and from there we'll actually add in some stone foundations. We want to have 3 in total, and we want to bring that to the outside. So we have a 2x3 shape, which is going to be kind of a fireplace that's going to rise up through the entire building and is going to provide us with some nice extra details. Then afterwards we can continue our foundations by 2, and then we also want to bring this out to be 2 wide here on the front. Then we can go back in by 1, but rather than just continue this whole line, we actually want to take out our quarter foundations, have 2 of them over here. Then we want to have 3 foundations here in the middle, and then another 2 quarter foundations to finish off that section. And from there we can bring this out again, we can make it 2 wide, and then we can focus on this side of the building. And this side in total is going to be 6, so that's already 2. We'll have 2 more, and then 2 more over here. And from there, we want to block off this side. So that's going to be too wide, and that means we have 2 over here connecting to that building that we started with. And of course, we can also connect this line through from one side to the other, so that it is a little bit more clear what the different shapes and parts of the buildings are altogether. Now you've got a choice to make. You can either go ahead and fill in all of the foundations, or maybe you can keep it clear like this and start doing it part by part, so it's a little bit more easy to see exactly which part of the building belongs to what. And as I said, we're going to build this in such an order that you can already start using part of the base whilst you work on finishing the rest of this, which is especially helpful if you're trying to do this in survival. So we'll start here with the entrance and the little staircase up to the front door. Then we'll build the side building first, so that you can use that as a proper base until you finish like the main dino pen and the little garage to the side, as well as the main living quarters with all of the room for your storage and crafting, etc. So to start with that, we're actually going to fill out these foundations here in the middle, so the ones that we need for the entrance, but we'll also start filling out the foundations here for the building at these sides, so that we know that we can start building this without worrying about any of the foundation supports. And as I said, you've got a choice to make whether you want to fill it in all the way through or only the sections that we're working on. So for now, I'm just going to go and fill everything in. But yeah, if you want to keep it a little bit more clear for yourself, of course, you can also do this at the moment when you start working on the different sections to just keep the overview a little bit more. So we just want to go and fill in all of these sections so that we'll have all the support that we'll need for the rest of the building. There we go. And of course, the little garage here to the side, we also want to fill that in just like this. So first up is the staircase entrance here. So this little small section in between the 2 bigger foundations is where we'll have the staircase. So first of all, we can of course start our stairs, make sure it goes all the way down, and we can bring it up by 3 from the foundation level. So 3 up, and then from there we should be able to bring out 4 more layers of ceilings. And then of course, being too wide, that is the entirety of this first section here. And here at the back, that also means we can raise up this stone wall to meet with those ceilings. So that's kind of what the in-between layer is going to look like from the back and from the front. But of course, that is not all of it. Then we can bring out our wooden pillars. We can have 2 here at the back before we add some beams going both ways, and we'll add in some windows. Now, depending on what you're going to use, if you're going to use cosmetics for the windows, you can of course use any material. I always like to use metal, so they're nice and strong, but you can of course also go for greenhouse glass if you want people to also see the windows if they don't have these skins installed. Of course, one of the options is just using frontier glass if you don't want to use any custom cosmetics, but I would use Architect's Paradise because that has some really nice clear glass, and it's a free cosmetic to use. And as you can see, that looks very nice already. And then here on the other side, we're going to be building the entrance. Again, we're going to be building a window. We're going to have some quarter walls first before we have a nice double door as the entrance. And then of course, above that, we just want to have more window. And then also we can add in the wooden beam to kind of mirror the same thing as the other side. Of course, we can add in the door itself, and then once again we can all change this to a window skin, so we have a very nice looking window and a nice front door here to our base. And from there we want to take out our wooden walls. We can actually raise this up by 2 in total, so it's a 2 by 2, and then on top of that we'll have a little layer of quarter walls to get this part started. And from there we want to take some ramps for the roof. I'm going to use metal in this case, and we can actually use the ramps to fill in this entire section. So we want, of course, make it stick out just a bit further than the layer of the wall. So in total these are 5 layers, and then of course 2 wide. And then here at the back we can of course also fill in these wooden walls to raise up until the right level here. So this is kind of the main entrance, and then especially if you're working on the base still, you haven't finished it, and for example you're going to do this one first, you might want to block off this side, of course, close this off with just some random walls so that you are safe inside whilst you work on the rest of it. So as mentioned before, we're going to work on this side of the building first, and to do that we're going to actually bring out some pillars. So after the first two foundations, we want to have a pillar that goes up by 3. Same thing over here, so another gap of 2 and a pillar of 3, and then a gap of 3 actually on this side. So in the middle there's a gap of 3, and then another gap of 2 to have another pillar going up. Then we can actually start filling in this entire wall with all metal walls just to get a good wall going. Now we're not going to keep this all with walls, and the reason I'm using metal is just so that every different skinned surface has a different material pretty much, so just makes the second phase easier. So this is the whole wall, but then of course we want to have some windows. So over here we'll turn that into a window, and then we'll turn this into a window too, just so that we get a little bit more light in there and, you know, can enjoy the views of our base. Now if you want those little light strips at the bottom of the window, as I had in the original build, what you want to do then is having some thin beams here at the bottom and skin them with the light bar from the Modern Structures cosmetic. And then for the other side of the building, what we want to do first is bring out a gateway. We want to line it up here with this corner, so right over there, and this is where we want to place this entrance. So that's going to go into the bottom part of this build, and it will also connect to all the other bottom parts of the different builds. Then we can take out all large walls, and we can actually add them here on the corner, so right over there, and then we can add them from the other side of the gateway, and we can kind of just have them go all the way to the end of the building here. So we have a nice tall wall going up on here, and then down here we also just want to fill in these bottom walls, not too higher of course, because here we'll have to make an entrance into the build itself. We can then also work on the, well, the connection between the two. So over here we want to raise up this wall by 3 and then go across like this, so that it will be the entrance into this part of the building, which also means we can start raising up these walls to be the same height, just like so, and of course continue that here on the outside as well. So pretty much a very tall wall on this side, because I mean there's not much to see there anyway. Then to give the building a little bit more shape to it, we want to start our ramps here. So we want to have the ramp stick out by 1, and then of course bring them up. We're gonna have 2 of them, so 2 wide going all the way up, and if we've done everything correctly, we should kind of line up perfectly over here on the other side. We'll have one sticking out here as well, and actually we can have it going across the top of this wall all the way into where we have the entrance, so that's kind of connecting the 2 different sections. And then over here on the other side, we actually want to bring this across this as a ledge, only on the outside so far, and then again make it stick out by 1, and then have 2 layers going all the way up here to kind of give shape to the building, make it stick out from the wall, and of course connect it to that little entrance portion that we have. And this will help give shape to our building, or the bottom part of our building, that we can now continue here on the front. Well, the first thing that we want to do is make a nice window here. So we're going to have a 2x3 window that will actually also change right away. So you can see it's 1 to the inside here, so we want to make that on the other side as well. So 1 on the inside, we want to have a 2x3 wall, and that is going to be a nice window for us right over there. So then what we can do is start to shape up the build. So we can have a large wall over here, we can have 3 walls going up over here, and then we can have those same 3 walls going up over there, and then of course we can have some ceilings right above that to kind of shape up this window. And again, you could have some thin beams here to create a little light pillar if you're using the Modern Structures cosmetic. Over here, we can just keep kind of filling up this part as much as we can. So some more walls here. Then we can have some quarter walls up here, quarter walls up there. And then finally, we want to take out our shallow slope wall and fill in those remaining pieces. Then we have this section left. To start with, we want to bring out our walls across the bottom here. Then we actually want to have our quarter walls over here and over there on both of the different sides. Then we can bring out our quarter ceilings. We can have 2 over here. We can have 2 over there on that side. And we can then have a full ceiling right there in the middle. Here on the other side, of course, we want to mirror what we've done. So we want to create those walls here at the bottom. We want to have these here going up along the sides. And we should also be able to have our full walls just going up like that. And we should have these here in the middle, and then these are going to be windows, but we're going to use the frontier skins for these instead to bring a little bit of that wooden accent into this, making it look a lot nicer in my opinion. And then of course, to fill this all in, we should be able to have our ceilings above that window to close it all back off. And then on top of that, of course, we should be able to go across with our walls just like this. And then of course, we want to still fill in the rest of the walls with some normal wall and quarter walls. And then finally, of course, the sloped walls to make sure that there's no gaps left. So that's going to be the front here. But of course, we want to make sure that we've got that all filled in here on the inside too. So first of all, we want to bring these walls across. And just like that, we kind of want to start filling in this shape in the same way. So as far as we can, we'll fill it in with normal walls. Then we'll take out some of our quarter walls to fill in the missing gaps. And then of course, you can have your shallow slope walls to really match that shape up and leave no gaps unattended. So that's quite a nice wall, which we of course want to replicate here on the other side. So first of all, we can have a large wall there on the corner. We can have 3 walls here, 3 walls over there, and of course 3 walls here at the bottom. But we'll also do that here at this bottom side. And then of course over here, we want to make sure that we bring this all the way up. We can start filling in this shape already a little bit, just like so. We can of course do the same thing over here. Start filling in the shape wherever we can. Then over here, we want to of course bring out our ceilings. We have a little bit of a gas that's in the way. There we go. He's no longer in our way. We'll have our quarter walls going up here, and of course on the other side too, just like so. We'll have our little quarter ceilings coming across these 2 sides, and then of course the full ceiling in the middle. Have our walls along the side as well as here in the middle, so that we can have another window. And then we should be able to add our 2 ceilings here in the middle on the top of the window, so that we can fill that in. And then finally, we should be able to of course place 3 walls there. We'll do the same thing here on the outside, just like so. And then of course, it's a matter of filling in the gaps in this wall. First the quarter walls, then the shallow slope walls. And there we go. That's this side completely filled in. Then of course, we also want to do that here on the inside. So again, filling in those quarter walls. And then finally, the shallow slope walls to finish that wall of the building. And that means that this bottom floor at least has the entirety completed. But as you can see, we still have a big gap here. We have not connected it up to the entrance there. So there is definitely still a lot more to do. So the next step, of course, is to build up to the next floor so that we can connect the 2. So first of all, we'll start our staircase right next to the gateway, bringing it up by 3 in total. And that's all the height we need before we can start filling in the floor all the way through. So we just want to go around and fill in the floor. Obviously, we want to leave a gap here for the stairs, so we'll leave this gap just about so. And then, of course, the rest of this we can fill in completely. It should now meet up with the main entrance as well, which is, of course, very, very useful. And also at this side, it should meet up with the ramps that we already had in place. There we go. And then, of course, back at the bottom floor, we want to have some railings next to the staircase just to make it all a little bit smoother. And then over here, we want to at least add these two for now. And then we'll also already place down the staircase going up to the next layer. We'll have 2 stairs just as normal, and then one of these staircases to rotate around for the next layer, which will be right over there, which also means we can kind of fill in this section a little bit. What we want to do is just place down all walls a bit like so. We can bring this all the way up. If you want to, of course, you could have a secret door in there if you still want to be able to access them. And then, of course, we want to have our railings here on the sides. So there we go. We already have the stairs ready to go for the next layer. Then we'll start this layer with some more windows. We go in by 1 over here and have a 2 by 2 over there. And the same thing over here on the other side. So just above the previous windows to keep it all nicely lined up. And, of course, we'll change them into our prepper windows. And with those windows in place, it's time to start shaping up this side of the build. We'll have some large walls just to help us save on structures. One of them right here on the corner, and that means we also will have one on the opposite corner, as well as right here in the middle. And this will just, of course, help us save a bunch of structures. So we'll have 3 of those right there in the middle. Then we can take out our normal walls and connect them through here above the window that we already placed down, so kind of shape them up a little bit. And we can actually also raise up these walls by 1 more, so that there are 5 in total, which will already shape up this build quite a bit. And just to shape it up a little bit more, we're going to have some wooden pillars here in these corners, as well as here in the middle, just to make this wall stand out a little bit more. Then we can take our wooden walls and we can actually also fill in these sides here along the window so that they no longer stand out as much. There we go. We want to have those on all sides. And then, of course, we also want to have the ceilings above the window to close that in completely. Then we can continue to the next layer over here. We also want to have 2 ceilings right over there, and from there we can also still bring out these wooden walls on the side, so basically continue the same kind of pattern. And it also means we can bring out our metal walls or windows actually, and have another window here and another window over there, which of course will change to the right texture so that we can actually see into the build. There you go. And if you want to add a little extra detail, you could have some thin beams here and skin them to the light bars so that you have that coming back in this part of the build too. And then finally for this part of the building is, of course, having these ceilings right above those windows to really nicely frame them for all of those. So before we continue with anything else building wise, we're going to fill in this floor so we can bring over those wooden ceilings all the way from the window back over here, which should line up with the staircase that we already made before. So we can kind of just start filling in this entire floor all the way through so that we have a little bit more room to work with. So for now, that's exactly what we'll do. There we go, all the way through to every little corner. So if we sneak into this layer, which is the first layer where we still have the metal and it meets the wood, we still want to fill in it a little bit more. First of all, along these sides, we want to make sure that those are raised up all the way to the top. And then, of course, above the windows, we also want to make sure that the wall continues so it looks a little bit smoother. Then here on the outside, we want to make sure that we have this pillar going all the way up. So first of all, we want to take out our shallow wooden wall, just like this. And then we'll have some quarter walls right above it, so that now this wall should line up exactly with the ceilings. and we can bring it all the way to the top so that this pillar is standing tall. And then on the top, we want to have the shallow slope wall so we can start the shape of the roof. And then here on the inside, we want to make sure that this wall continues up as well. So we'll have 2 normal walls and then some quarter walls to make sure it rises up to the same height. Then over here in the middle, we want to go in by 1 and bring up this pillar by 3 in total, and then half a pillar on top of it. Then we'll switch to our beams, and after the first 2 pillars, we'll have beams going to the side here, and then 2 beams going to that other side, which will divide up the windows that we'll have here. We can actually start filling in a part of this window, just like so. I'll use the metal walls, but of course you can use whatever material. And the bottom layer, we can instantly switch into windows, of course. Then over here, we want to continue the same shape for the roof that we'll have. So first of all, we can have one over here, and then we can have some quarter walls right next to it. And this should allow us to continue that same shape in the nice shallow slope that we started with that pillar. Of course, this is all going to be turned into window, so just like this. And from there, of course, we want to continue that window a little bit further. So we'll have these over here, we'll have these quarter walls, and then those shallow slope walls will continue up a little bit more. Once again, we can change this all to the windows so that we have one big window with some wooden accents going all the way up to the other side, which is where we can start the second pillar for the building here. Now we should be able to add a large wall here, just like so. We can do the same thing on this corner and on that corner, just to bring this all the way up. Actually, you might want to rotate this. I just noticed that they're facing the wrong way because this is still on the outside. So we want to keep the wood texture the exact same, just like so. And over here, we want to also have the quarter walls, which we can then also do here on the front, and then raise up with one more shallow slope wall so that we have that one, which means we can raise this wall up by a full wall right there at the end, just so that the whole shape should now line up. We can actually take out our ramps over here. We want to, of course, make them stick out by 1 over there, 1 over here as well on the outside. And we can, first of all, just keep this whole thing going all the way along the front here, so that there's 2 layers of roof that is going to go all the way to the top, and of course stick out by 1 at the very end, just to get that shape for the front in place, as you can see. And then we actually want to make this 4 wide for now, so we'll continue that all the way up so that we can get the beginning of our roofs into place. There we go. And then, of course, there is a final gap that is left, which is everything underneath this layer of ceilings. So first of all, we want to bring out our wooden walls wherever we can and place those in. And then once we've done that, we want to add our quarter walls into the available gaps before we add in our shallow slope walls wherever we can. Unfortunately, some of these will have gaps in them, just to make them all meet up. That's why I would definitely recommend skinning the wood, at least to the frontier wood, or maybe a wood from some of your favorite custom cosmetics. I personally use the Golden Dynasty wood because I really like it, but that is a premium cosmetic. Now, once we've done that, of course, we want to do the same thing here over on the other side. So first of all, going into the middle, 1 to the inside, we'll raise up the pillar by 3, not that one, and then a half pillar on top of it, of course. After the first 2, we'll have 2 beams going this way and 2 beams going the other way, just like that, to kind of shape up the build a bit more. Then we'll have 2 walls up here, and then also some quarter walls on top of that, of course. And the same thing can be done over here on the front. We'll have these and our shallow slope wall. There we go. From there, of course, we can continue these walls down. We can have some quarter walls and a shallow slope wall to finish that pillar going all the way. Over on this corner, of course, this is where we can have our large walls. So we want to start with those to get the right height there. And now we can of course also start making our window. First of all, the first 2 layers quite easily, and afterwards we can kind of start building up the rest of these layers just like so. We can of course have our shallow slope walls going up like this, and then just filling in the remaining gaps. We can of course change this now to a nice big window, just as we did on the other side. There we go. And of course these quarter walls we can continue, and we can have a shallow wall up there and a full wall at the very end, which now also means we can take out our metal ramps once more, and we can start adding in that layer of the roof here on the outside, being too wide. There we go. And of course sticking out by 1 over here, but also definitely sticking out by 1 here at the top. And of course also here over on this side of the building, we want to make sure that these are 4 wide, so we can continue adding another 2 wide layer next to these all the way up the build. And then of course we also want to fill in these ones, so we'll fill in the walls as far as they can go, fill in the quarter walls wherever they allow it, and then of course the shallow slope walls to finish this part of the building too. Okay, so first up is this layer over here. We actually want to add another window over here, just on this side though, so we'll have the same kind of shape. Then we can take out our large wall again, of course. We can place one over here, should be fitting perfectly. And then of course we can have some of the quarter walls and then our shallow slope wall right over there to finish that shape. Then we can have some ceilings above the window, and of course we can have another wall here to the side, just so that we have this shape completed. And then over here above the window, we actually just want to fill the wall in completely with our wood. And we also of course want to make a little bit of a staircase here, so we'll have some railings just so you don't fall down it. And we can actually start raising up most of this wall. So over here on the top, we want to just raise up some large walls to get some height in there. And for now, I would actually completely close this up, so we can just have our large walls going all the way through. But in the end, we'll end up making a little passageway here, so that we can actually connect it to the rest of the build and use it as a nice staircase up to the 2nd floor on the other side. We'll also have another layer of walls right here at the top to finish that section off. Here on the front, however, we want to continue our ramps all the way through on this layer, and then we'll actually start working on the inside a little bit, give it a little bit more shape. We will continue this wall out until we have a 2 wide gap left over there. We can then also add a pillar here to the end of it, and just for good measure, we'll also have a pillar at that end. But we'll also want to continue our lovely wood here, just so that the texture kind of continues. Once we've done that, we actually want to add in a wooden staircase over here. So here in front of the window, we're going to have 2 of these staircases coming up, and of course we'll have some beautiful railings along the sides of it. Then we can take out our wooden ceilings, and we can start to fill in this part of the build. So first of all, we'll bring this all the way across over here, but also definitely all the way in front of the window on this side. Now over here, you can choose whether you want to continue this over there, but probably what I would do is just have a railing there and kind of leave it as is. Over here, of course, we do want to make sure that we fill in this section, so we want to have some walls over there. That one is already filled in, of course. Then up here, you can kind of choose whether you want to fill this all in, or you just want to have a ceiling there, and then you can still use that space as part of your storage. But again, that is totally up to you what you need more or what you want, because it's also quite nice and clean if you just close it off like this. And over here, you might want to choose to, instead of the large wall, kind of follow the pattern over here. So here we probably want to have these textures so that it kind of follows the pattern of the inside a little bit more. Whilst obviously here on the outside, we still need the same textures here. So you probably want to have a change here, not a large wall, but 2 normal walls here. And then you can match the textures here on the inside perfectly. And then over here, we're going to start building the greenhouse. So we just want to raise these up by 2. And then, of course, we'll bring them here to the inside as well. And we'll have a nice little greenhouse here so that we can, you know, grow some crops, grow some plants, maybe hatch some elder claws, etc. So we just want to build it up just like this. And then, of course, here in the middle, we'll have a nice door so that you can enter it. And then on top, we just want to have more greenhouse glass. Now, you can kind of pick and choose whether you want to keep it as the greenhouse glass, or maybe you want to also make sure that it has that modern look to it, so we can turn it into the very clean looking glass that we've used in the rest of the build. Again, that is totally up to you what you like more. I quite like the very modern look even for the greenhouse, but of course, if you prefer to keep it more in the greenhouse aesthetic, you can definitely do so. Now we just have a random weird little box. That is not the best look. So what we want to do is have our metal ceilings come around the edge here, so that it gives a little bit more shape to the whole building that is sticking out here. And yeah, it allows us, of course, to grow all of the plants in there. And then here from the top, we just want to continue the normal roof as is. And with that, that means we have this section completed. So we have that nice greenhouse on the top now. We, of course, if you want to use this as a temp base, you'll have to close off the entrances a little bit. But other than that, you already have a decent amount of space on the inside here, with plenty of different layers to utilize as your personal base, and even a functional greenhouse, so that you can also go crazy with that. But yeah, that's definitely not it, of course. That's just one part of the building, because as you can see, the main building as well as the small garage to the side are still left to build. Next up is this little garage to the side. It's going to be quite easy. First of all, we'll start with having a nice gateway here on the front, as well as some staircases coming down from it, so it's all nice and connected. Then we'll start here with the wall on the side. We can actually raise this up by 2 and go all the way across from one side to another. So we just want to do that right now. And then above it, we actually want to have a little quarter wall. So again, we'll just continue to go from one side to another, just like this. Then we will take out our wooden pillars, and we'll have 2 going up here, leave a gap of 2, and have another 2 going up. Same thing over here, gap of 2, and then 2 more pillars. Then we'll switch to the beams, go across the top for both of these sections. And then we actually want to take out the frontier glass, and we want to change those to some nice windows here on the side of the building. Then, of course, we'll have to worry about the front over here. We actually want to take out some large walls. We can place one over here, one here at the front, and we can also place one right back there. So that is to help us shape up the rest of the building. Well, these sides are going to be quite easy. We want to have some walls there. We want to have some walls here. And then we have some walls here on the front. Here we want to continue with some quarter walls to go into a shallow slope wall to get the shape started. We then also want to have some ceilings right above the entrance to kind of shape this all up. And this is also, of course, where we can continue the shape. So the shallow slope wall here, here, and right on top of that. Then we can fix this gap with some quarter walls so that this shape is now completed. And it also means that we can end this wall with some quarter walls too. And now it should all be complete. Then we can take a look here on the other side. Of course, we can first of all raise up this as a window and then change it to the frontier skin. Then we'll take a look here on the inside. Well, you need to decide whether you want to still use the insides. I think you can just close them off because you don't really need the spaces that much, really. But of course, you could use a secret door instead if you really wanted to. We can have some quarter walls on top of there and just kind of mimic the shape so that that entrance looks a little bit nicer. Here on this side, if you're not going to use the secret door, you can of course just use a large walls to save on structures, and then you can kind of continue the shape the same way around there. And then of course we can do that over here too, so we have the shallow walls just like this. And then of course we still need to fix the rest of this, the front. So we'll have our walls here going up, and then we'll have 3 walls over there on that side. Above the window we have of course the ceiling, and below the window you could add a little thin pillar if you want that light beam to come back here too. And then of course we can continue filling in these. We actually want to have another wall right along that side, and some more quarter walls right over here before we add in our slope walls all the way, so that we have that shape completed. Then we can take out our ramps. We can of course add them one on the outside here, so that we have a little bit of an overhang, and we want to do that all the way here to the top. Then we can start bringing this across the side of the building, so we're going to have that nice overhang all the way. We'll bring it a little bit over the front edge again, so that we have the overhang going, and then only here at the front we can add 2 extra ones, so this sticks out a little bit more. But the rest of the building, we're actually just gonna connect this layer up like that, and then of course fill in the middle of the roof with our ramps all the way from one side to the other, to finish off this little side garage stable area that we can have as a nice entrance, because of course we also want to add in our gate, so that we have a nice way to enter through the building here. And now with that little garage done, it's just the main building in the middle that is left for us to build. So now it's time to start here on the middle and main building, and we'll take out our gateways first. Actually, we want to continue this entrance here over to the other side, so we want to have that one, and then over here, so in going into the little garage on the side, we also want to keep that entrance, so that is all aligned on the same line here, so that it makes a little bit more sense. Then we'll start working here over on this side. So for the dino pen area, we actually want to just have large walls here on the corners, large walls over there as well, same over here on these insides. Then over here we can definitely start by adding a few of these large walls. We can actually bring it all the way up to where we have that main entrance over here. And then here on the outside, we can also have 3 of them, then leave a gap of 2 before we have one more large wall there. We'll also have them here on the front and on the side, and the same thing over here in that corner. So we want to fill those in, and of course the one over here, but we can actually also add them here all the way around where we do not have the entrance of the gateway. So we want to just start adding in those walls, which will already fill in a bunch of these structures. Over here on the side, we want to actually have 3 pillars going up. Same over here, just like that. We can have a metal wall in the middle to create a nice little window so that we get some light, and above it of course we'll have our normal stone wall continuing. And then after that we can actually add another layer of stone walls all the way from one side to another here. We can also do that here above the gateway. This one we'll leave open because that is going to be the entrance into the main build, but here we can continue that all the way through to the very end, which also means that we can have here in the middle a little staircase. So we want to have stairs going up from that main entrance and going up by 2 in total, which will arrive in the main part of our base. We can then bring out our stone slope walls, of course, here on the sides of the staircase, as well as filling in the rest of the sides with some more walls. Then on the opposite side, obviously we also want to have these walls continue above the entrance, but we also want to continue them here along the side. So raise them up just one more all the way across the side. We'll leave this open, of course, which is going to be the chimney, but we'll have those raised up as well. Then over here, obviously, we're going to do something different. So first of all, we can raise up the final layer. So make it 5 high in total from one side to the next. Then we actually want to bring another layer down. So we have this. And then in the middle, of course, we can have our ceilings going from one way to the other. Now, if you don't like these walls sticking out, you could, of course, replace them with small walls. It does cost you a few extra structures, but I'll leave that up to your own taste, whether you want to have it a clean shape or you don't mind a little extra wall sticking out on the top there. So this is going to be just a window. So what we want to do is bring out our wooden pillar. We want to have it right here in the middle. One side then is just going to be some nice wooden accent wall, and the other side we're actually going to turn into a window. So we want to fill these in, and then we can change them into some nice windows here. Still keeping the wooden accents, but just making it a little bit more special this way. And then over here, we can also have some wooden beams at the bottom. You can also have a thin beam here, so you can add more of those lights in to add an extra detail that way. And then finally here on the other side, of course, we also want to bring this across on the top layer, just like that. We also will lower it by one more. Then on the inside, again, we can take out these ceilings. And it is again up to you whether you mind having these stick out a little bit. It's not the cleanest. You could maybe have some storage here, but yeah, you could also, of course, take these out, add the extra structure. I guess it's how much you want to lower your structure count, yes or no. Then here we want to start building the entrance. So first of all, we'll have some wooden quarter walls going up these sides. Same thing right over here. And then here in the middle, we actually want to make sure that we have some staircases going up to the actual entrance, which will be a large cellar door. We can change it to the barn door and then place it right there in the middle as the main entrance. Now, if you're not going to skin this is going to look quite weird because it's going to have some gaps, so you want to add some pillars there. But of course, you could also skin it to the frontier skin to already remove the gaps quite easily. As for the fireplace, it's actually quite easy. We want to start with some large walls going around the outsides just like this. And then, of course, adding another wall around the top of that. We also want to take out some stone beams, add them across the top of the large walls. There we go. And then what you could use this for, and also kind of make it make sense, is of course having the industrial forge in there. So hopefully you should be able to place it just like this, even on official. I think this should fit in perfectly, so it's a nice little spot for it. But of course, it means that we can continue these beams across. We can add in these walls around the top. And then it kind of depends on what settings you have. Like, I can still go down and build this wall all the way around the structure. On official, you might just want to have some slope walls here. I don't know if it will allow you to place this in. If not, just have these slope walls right over there already to avoid any collision. But yeah, technically, you could kind of build some kind of like shape around it like this to make the industrial forge fit into the actual fireplace. And after that, we can actually have a, well, kind of in-between layer for the fireplace before we continue to raise it up even further with some large walls around the outside, just like so. Making sure that we place all the large walls in the right spot so it raises it up by the right amount. And then finally we can raise it up by 2 more normal walls. That should give it the right height, and it's just easier to do that now so that we can kind of build the rest of the building around it. Of course, we still will need to add a few details to it, but at least the basic shape is down. Then for the next layer, first of all, we want to have a metal ceiling row here at the sides. We kind of just want to have those continue. Again, that's because we're going to skin this all a certain way, and it's just easier to remember which is which. It kind of doesn't matter what you build it out of. You could build it out of anything you want and then just skin it if you're going to skin it. And then actually these final ones over here, we want to get rid of because that's going to already be part of the balcony over there. Which means I can take out my wooden ceilings now and make it stick out one over the front edge. And then, of course, continue this all the way to the other side to connect it back up over here. And it means that we can also fill in the center part of this building to create our main floor. So we have the dino pen below. And now we'll have the main floor here. Over here on the other side, we can also make it stick out by just the one, to create a little balcony on this side too. And then again, we can just continue filling in the middle here. Of course, now we can also connect it up to the main stairs that we already built from the main entrance, so you can easily get up and down in the building. And we'll fill in the final section just like that, so that we have our main living room, storage room, crafting room, whatever you want to make of it, ready to be built. Okay, so it's time to start to shape up the rest of the build. And first of all, we'll start here on the front. We'll have a large wall that we want to snap right here to the corner of that metal ceiling. So yeah, we want to have this going up like so. We want to have another one right over there. And we're kind of going to just build a little support column here. Now, again, you could have a secret door in there and you use normal walls, but for these, I don't think that's going to be worth it. So we want to start with that support column, which is going to be the start of giving the entire building shape. From this top, we're actually going to bring this out a little bit more. Just the last two ones we're going to leave out for now, but we are going to raise this up by 2 and raise this one up by 3 in total. Which also, of course, means we can raise that up again. And we should be able to raise this up just as much. Over here on the other side, we should be able to raise this one up by 3 in total. Then go into a shallow slope wall before adding 2 quarter walls and another shallow slope wall to get this shape started and get that beam going across. Which also means we can have 3 walls in here for now. We can then, of course, bring out all metal ceilings and have them going across the bottom of this from one way to another. And we can also have it going across the top here to connect the 2 different sides, which, of course, is always going to be helpful. And then just to give this all a little bit more shape and sense, we can start adding in some of our roofs to give this whole shape a bit more context. So we're just going to add our roof, have a little overhang here, of course, on the front, on the outside, and bring this up all the way. It should meet up with this wall. And of course, we're going to stick it out one further, just like that. So that is the main big roof that is starting to take shape now. We do need to fill in a little bit of these gaps, of course. Have some quarter walls here, quarter walls over there. And then we can have some quarter walls on this side too. Shallow slope wall on top. And that should give the support beam all the way to the roof so that it is all connected now. Then over here, we'll leave a gap of 3 before we start adding these in again. So again, we can add in the large walls here. We don't really care about adding possible secret doors for extra storage. And then we can bring these across from one side to the other. Of course, this one, we actually also want to fill in here on the inside. Same over here, all the way to the end. We want to fill that in, and we also want to fill that in on that side here. So that is that support beam done. This support beam as well. But of course, we just want to raise this up as much as possible again to follow the same kind of shapes as we did before. So we'll have all quarter walls on top of these, and then of course our shallow wall. So that is another pillar to support the roof here. Then of course another gap of 3 means that we have the next pillar right over here. So again, large walls going all the way around the structure just like this, raising them up by 2 more on all of these sides. There we go. And then of course 3 over here. Have the quarter walls again along the top section and the shallow slope walls around the sides. And then of course we also want to make sure to continue that beam that goes across from one side to the other. Of course we also need the ceilings for this, so we can have those there, we can have those here, we can have those across the bottom, and have those across this bottom too. Then actually over here we want to fill this in a little bit more. We actually want to have a little wooden wall going around all of this, just to give that entrance a little bit more shape for now. And then the final section is actually going to be slightly different. We're going to have 2 large walls next to each other because of the chimney on the other side, just to give the house a bit more shape after that. So the same concept, just 2 wide pillar that will support this part. So we'll have that right there. Then of course we can still have the same beam going across from one side to the other. We can have the same ceilings in there to make sure that this is filled in, giving that shape to it. And then of course these ones again we're going to raise up by 3 here at the end. We're going to do 2 on all of the other sides. There we go. We can have all quarter walls going round, and then of course the shallow slope walls at the very end. And that means that we have all of the support beams here in place, and it also means that we can start giving the rest of this wall some shape. So over here we want to have a wooden wall right over there. Same thing over here, we'll have the wooden wall right there, and the rest of the wall is actually going to be a window. So we'll fill this section in, and we'll fill that section in, and this is actually all going to be the frontier window. You might want to change that to frontier wood or any other wood of your taste, just to make sure that there's no gaps between the two, but that already fills in those sections of the wall. And then for the top layer here, we kind of just want to start out by having these walls made out of wood completely fill in the different gaps over here before we add the final layer of quarter walls, so that that side of the building is now completely filled in. There's no need to have a lot of windows there, obviously, because, well, it's just facing the other build that we've already made, so it would be a little bit of a waste. We can then also bring across these ramps just so that we have a better start to the roof and the general shape of it. We won't fill it in all the way through just yet, just so that we have the light to work with whilst we're building all of this. But we will, of course, bring across these final 2 layers just to give that shape here for the end of the building a little bit more as well. And then it should end here, aligning with that chimney that is going to break up our roof a little bit, but it's also going to make sure that we have a little bit of extra detail there. So we want to bring this across on this side too, all the way. We'll actually do the first 2 layers just to make sure. There we go. So it's already taking shape now. Definitely, of course, still a lot to go though. Then it's time for the other side, where we definitely want to mirror these beams, of course, but they're going to be a little bit smaller. So first of all, we can raise those 2 up, and over here we can actually also raise up these 2 walls. Same thing, of course, here on the inside, raising up those walls, and here on the front. The front is quite easy, of course, going into that slope wall, and then over here we at least want to have these quarter walls right over there. Then we can, of course, still bring across this beam just as we have on the front. We can have some of the quarter walls, a slope wall just like that. Same over here, bringing across that same beam shape. So we want to make sure that we get the right snap point. There we go. And of course, adding in the ceilings to the top and bottom of that beam at the very end, which is definitely going to help giving our build quite the bit of shape already. So that side is kind of done now with the beam. Here, of course, we have the support pillars, but we need to make sure that we fill in the sides of these two. So first of all, we'll just build these up a little bit more, making the walls 3 high, adding in these slope walls to the side quite easily, and then of course finally having the quarter walls in between to give it even more shape. And then finally, of course, it is adding in a few windows on this side because they're definitely useful here. So we'll have windows to the sides here. Again, going to use the frontier glass here to get a little bit of those wooden accents back into the building. Then we'll have a wooden wall right next to it. Again, definitely want to change these either to the frontier skin or a different wooden skin so that the gaps are gone. We can fill in the top with our quarter walls just like that. And with that, the wall here on the side is also completely done. And we just have the back and front wall left, as well as, of course, some of the interior bits and the chimney. First of all, we can take out our wooden pillars. We can place them here. So it's on this line, go in by 2, have a pillar go up, a gap of 2, and have another pillar go up. We'll do the exact same thing here on this side, have that pillar there, and have that pillar over here. We can actually connect these pillars up or continue these pillars here at the top. So one more pillar up here, one more pillar up there, then half a pillar there, and half a pillar here, just to kind of continue those pillars. We're not actually continuing them through these supporting beams, but the windows will have the same kind of shapes that way, so that from the outside especially, it kind of looks like they are in fact continuing. Now here for the top layer, it's going to be quite easy to fill in these windows. We just want to follow the shapes. At the bottom, we have the option to do something more special. So first of all, we'll fill in these windows quite easily with walls, quarter walls, and or slope walls. Then we can of course change them to those beautiful windows to let in the light again. Now we'll do the same thing over here on the other side. Start filling in these windows first. So all the way across, bringing out quarter walls. There we go. And filling in our shallow slope walls too. Changing them to the windows. There we go. So it lets in plenty of light. Now you can just fill in these windows and maybe leave a little door so you can access your balcony, but there's actually another really cool trick Sarge showed me that I think is really cool for a modern build like this. So what we'll do is we'll go to the secret doorways, and we want to just start placing in our windows as normal, just like that. And there we go. Let me actually go to the inside here. So what you want to do is you want to set all of these doors to the same code. For now, we're going to use the middle one as an example. So what I'm going to do is set pin code. I'm just going to use 0s. And we're going to, again, do that for all of these. So now, at least all of these windows, but you want to do all of the windows, are set to the same pin code. Let's actually turn them into the windows as well so we can see properly what is going on. Obviously, this way we have no door. So what we want to do is bring out a keypad, place it somewhere on one of these pillars so that you can easily access it. You want, of course, make sure that you have power in your building when you're trying this. But once you've done that, you want to use the same code we've just placed on the walls, and you'll see they will open. So this is a way that you can have opening big windows as an entrance to your balconies, which I think looks really cool. You can play around with this. You could do only the middle sections, only the side sections, do all of them on the same pin code or on different pin codes. What I would do at the very least is, of course, have one pin code for this side of the building and have one pin code for that side of the building and have another keypad here, so that not when you're trying to open one side, both windows will open at the same time. So yeah, make sure to separate the pin codes. But this is a really cool feature to get some more unique windows, some nicer windows without seeing a door, but still being able to go in and out of your base. And if you don't want to use the keypad, you can of course still just open the doors normally as you would. So what comes next for the inside is kind of up to what you want most. What I did is have just a bedroom on that side and not have a whole second floor in this layer. Obviously, you can have an entire floor if you need that extra space, definitely do so. But the main challenge, of course, is building a staircase up there without wasting too much space down here. So what I did is actually connect it up to this side of the building rather than having just a staircase coming down here. But of course, yeah, again, you can play around with that. So at the very least, what we're going to do is we're going to break open this little section over here, which of course means we do need to do some repairing, but we can also start filling in the floor for this middle section. Well, we do see we have some bigger holes now in the building, so we need to replace these walls with normal walls instead of the large wall, and then we'll have a nice entranceway into this new section over here. So we just want to place those down, and then we can have either a small door or a double door, whatever you want, right in there, so that we have a way to get through to this side. Now, I'm just going to show you what I did. Again, you can play around with the interior and build it to your own needs. So we have this ceiling coming through. We want to then have some pillars to support those corners. And then what I did is also have some divider walls here, just so that you can have some storage or whatever right next door. And obviously you would have some railings around this side so that you don't fall off. We can then bring out our staircase. So from here, we want to obviously bring this up by 3 in total. There we go. And then it's time, of course, to build a little bedroom up here. So you can kind of make this, of course, as big or as small as you want. What I personally would do is probably something around this size at the very least. But again, you could continue all the way. You could do many different things. But yeah, kind of just whatever amount of space you need up here. You can, of course, add the railings around the sides. And we can have a few of these going on as well. Just keep in mind that if you go too far, it will go through the ramp or the roof on the outside. So probably I would stop right around here. And that means you have a small little bedroom here. Again, you can make it bigger if you want to. It's connected to the other side, so you do have to walk around a little bit, but that way you can still have plenty of storage and utilize as much space down here as you want. And once we've done that, it kind of means that we can just start filling in the entire roof here, because all that we will need to do is actually the chimney and the fireplace. So for now, we just want to start filling in this section. We'll leave a small space here around the chimney open so that we have some room and some light to work with, but the rest of the roof we can definitely start filling in already. So that is what we'll do, just like that, and we can continue to do that over here as well. So just want to place down all of these ramps to get the roof on top of the building. There we go. We can do that all the way through. Final ones, and then all that is left is to fix up the chimney and make sure that it is nice and functionable. So what we want to do first is creating a little bit more shape for this. Also, what we'll do over here is making sure that we have a wall going across here before we can start filling in basically the remaining layers. We can then have our shallow slope walls over there, and we can have our ramps in here to make sure that we have that shape. We actually only need one, and I'll show you in a little bit why. And of course, then we want to have a ceiling in between these so that it is completely filled in. We're actually going to fill in a fake wall here as well, just to make this a little bit more cozy. And we're going to have a nice fireplace in here that is going to be tall enough to go into the main chimney so we don't see where the smoke goes. You can have some libraries and some cozy decorations around it, but yeah, it adds a little bit of life, of course, to your base. And if you want to make it look even nicer and a little bit more connected, what you can do is have some pillars here at the end and then some half pillars on top of that to make this all fit in a little bit better. Alternatively, if you don't like that too much, what you could also do is just have these pillars go all the way up to the top until they meet the roof, so that they blend in a little bit better that way. It's up to you, whatever you prefer. So now that we've done that, we can finish the rest of the roof over here. And all that we need to do then is to add a nice top finish to this chimney. So we'll go around with these beams to get started with. Then we actually want some half pillars on the corners to begin with. We also want to have 2 right there in the middle over here. And we should have 1 in the middle to the sides. Then, of course, we can take out our beams again. Once again, go around the outside to follow that pattern, which will just give a little bit more character and more shape to the top of the chimney here. Then we want to take out our ceilings and we go down 1, 2, and 3 to create a platform in here. And if you want smoke coming out of your chimney, the best thing to do is to create a little wall here, and then we can have a few of these fireplaces in here just to basically create a bunch of smoke that you will see. And then the best way to power it, of course, it's not nice to go in there all the time, but if you have a pyromane with enough food in its inventory, you can turn it on to power it that way, and then you can still have some smoke coming out of the top, which is of course very nice as an extra detail to add more life to your base. Then we want to take out our stone quarter ceilings here along the sides. We'll go across them just like so. And then here in the middle, we'll actually have our full ceilings again, just like that. And then we can have some beams over here. And we can have some beams across the sides of these, just to give that a little bit more detail and not just making it a gaping hole that people will fly into. And after the chimney, all that is left to do is fix your balconies. Now you can either go for a balcony border just like this and then change it to that nice glass cosmetic. I really like to use that one. Or of course you can just use railings instead if you prefer that look. But yeah, I think I definitely like the glass vibe more. So that is what I'll do. So we'll go all the way around the edge here, add them everywhere. And then of course it also means that you want to make sure that you change these into glass all the way around the build. It definitely gives a very nice and clean aesthetic to your balcony. The same of course goes for the one on the other side here. So again, we want to just go around adding either the quarter walls or the railings, whatever you prefer. Quarter walls of course do mean that you need twice the amount of structures, but you should definitely still be within the limit, that is for sure. It just kind of depends on how much else you want to decorate on the inside, of course. And there we go. With that, we have the balconies complete, we have the chimney complete, and we have this beautiful modern house base for you to use in ARK, with plenty of space for your creatures, your breeding projects, your storage, your greenhouse, you name it. You can do it all in this beautiful design. If we then take a look at the finished product, this is what we end up with. We have the seamless skin, which is the white skin. All of the cosmetics I'll also put down below. We have the Danny concrete skin for this stone part, so the Dino Pen part. We have, of course, the Frontier skin for some of the windows. We also have the Golden Dynasty wood. That's the one I use, but you can, of course, also use the Frontier ones or any other wood that you think looks good and blends in quite nicely. Then from Architecture's Paradise, we have this very nice floor, which I think is the rubber floor here on the foundations as well as the stairs. We have the seamless skin on the roof, but then just painted in a darker color to kind of get that nice contrast. And then all of those blue light beams that we see are from the modern structures to give a nice bit of detail. Then additional details that I added is a nice little wooden beam at the bottom to kind of separate the two sections. Definitely optional, but a really good one if you want to get a little bit more contrast in there. We have Also from modern structures, I think these nice wooden tiles as the floor in this level, which just makes it feel a little bit more modern. And I think that is pretty much all of the cosmetics that we used. Of course, the glass also was from Architecture's Paradise. Again, all of the cosmetics that I used for my design is what I will link down below. So you can kind of see the skinning. The way I build it is quite easy. The chimney, of course, just stays stone. Then the stone foundation of the middle part all turns into concrete. The wood you skin into your wood skin. The floors, the ceilings, I guess you changed into something different, and the metal walls that we didn't turn into windows all become the seamless skins, and that is how you get this base to be what it is. Now, if you want to see a full and proper tour, check out the full video I made for that, but we'll do a quick little tour through the base. So over here we have the small little garage. In my case, I've got some gachas here, even though we're on Valguero, but you know, you can get them, you can transfer them, and they can perfectly fit inside here as an example. And here in the middle you can do some breeding, as you can see, but even some bigger creatures like a Rex or the Etholdir, which are definitely a lot bigger than the normal theries, can easily still fit inside. But also your replicator, of course, the industrial forge we placed down. You can see there is actually quite a lot of space down here in your dino pen. Then here in the middle I've got a little bit of a hatching spot, as well as, of course, my power. We have more gachas here, as well as some elder claws in the other side, so you can even use this as a little bit more of your dino parking base, and of course your breeding projects. Then up here we have some snow owls, just, you know, utilizing this space. But as you can see, quite a decent amount of space left here, so you could definitely do more with it. Then we get to the main entrance. We can go up here, but we can also go into the main building. The main building itself is kind of like your living room, but also all of the crafting is over here. As you can see, we also have more storage over here and a little kitchen corner over here. Nice living room, big windows, of course, letting in plenty of light. Decorated that fireplace in a nice way. And of course, we got a little bedroom up here. I think I made mine slightly smaller, but again, totally up to you what you want. And as you can see, all of the windows are currently opened, but if we go here and we deactivate it and we use our code, they're all closed now. And yeah, we have a nice big window there instead. Then of course we can also continue up on this side. We have all our breeding related things here, as well as over cryo storage. We have some more hatching going on, and then all the way to the top, of course, we've got a lovely little greenhouse with plenty of plants growing here, even some elder claw, and all of the needs right at hand. So yeah, definitely a cool base design. There's loads of ways, of course, you could utilize the interior. There is definitely plenty of space in here to make it your own home, and a very productive ARK base, I think. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this build tutorial. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again in the next video or the next stream. For now, goodbye.